Welcome to another episode of Rebecca and Rebecca. My name is Rebecca Yager, coming to you from warming up Dallas, Texas. And my partner in books is Rebecca Reed. Hey, Rebecca.
Hey, Rebecca.
It's good to
I
see
love saying that.
you. You ready for springtime?
I am. Yes, Trek is tired of being indoors and we're ready to get outside and, start having some better weather and things like that. So, yes.
Very good. Well, we are reviewing All We Thought We Knew by Michelle Shockley, which you like because it takes place on a Tennessee horse farm.
Of course. Yes.
This
Tennessee
is a dual
walking horse.
time book, and it was a lot of fun to read. So, why don't you tell folks about the book, and then we can tell everyone what we thought about it.
Okay. All right. Here it is. She was so sure she knew her family's history. Now she wonders if she was wrong about all of it. 1969. When Maddie Taylor's twin brother was killed in Vietnam, she lost her best friend and the only person who really understood her. Now, news that her mother is dying sends Maddie back home, despite blaming her father for Mark's death. Mama's last wish is that Maddie would read some old letters stored in a trunk from people Maddie doesn't even know. Mama insists they hold the answers Maddie is looking for. 1942. Ava Delaney is picking up the pieces of her life following her husband's death at Pearl Harbor. Living with her mother-in-law on a secluded farm in Tennessee is far different from the life Ava imagined when she married only a few short months ago. Desperate to get out of the house, Ava seeks work at a nearby military base, where she soon discovers the American government is housing Germans, who they have classified as enemy aliens. As Ava works to process legal documents for the military, she crosses paths with Gunther Schneider, a German who is helping care for wounded soldiers. Ava questions why a man as gentle and kind as Gunther should be forced to live in the internment camp. And as they become friends, her sense of injustice grows, as do her feelings for him. Faced with the possibility of losing Gunther, Ava must choose whether loving someone deemed the enemy is a risk worth taking, even if it means being ostracized by those around her. Excuse me. In the midst of pain and loss, two women must come face to face with their own assumptions about what they thought they knew about themselves and others. What they discover will lead to a far greater appreciation of their own legacies and the love of those dearest to them.
Michelle accomplished that in the book with the two women
Uh,
discover.
yes.
Means a lot. Okay, right off the bat, I really enjoyed this book. I'm a fan of split time novels and really liked it. I thought Michelle did a good job with both stories, because sometimes when you read the dual time books, you always tend to like one time period better than another, and I found myself liking both a lot.
I did too. I first of all, I enjoyed the Vietnam time period just because it's not one that you normally read. It's not a popular one, and as a matter of fact, I tend to actually steer away from the World War IIs a little bit, just because there's been so many books written that about that time period. But this one is not, this one is in the home area. It's a home base, in America. So that's a little bit different too. I like that. But I really, all of these characters really were captivating. And you always expect, you in a good dual time, you want those stories to impact each other. And I thought that these stories did that very, very well. I mean, yeah, without giving away spoilers, of course, because we don't do that here. Yeah, you're going to be satisfied as a reader, I feel like, with the way these stories end up weaving themselves together.
I agree with that. It opens in the 1969 time period with Maddie, and This to me was tricky because Maddie almost starts out as unlikable. And I say that,
Yeah.
I don't want to scare anyone away because her arc is fabulous. And she really isn't unlikable at all. But it's close. She's
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 had
rough
some,
around the edges. Yeah.
yes, I agree with you 100%. I think that Michelle walked a fine line, between Ziva's here.
Hi, Ziva.
Now she wants, yep, she
If she
wants me
wants to play.
to
Ziva, we're
So,
working
yeah,
here.
yes, and she has a noisy toy, so I apologize to y'all for that. Um, but yeah, I think Michelle walked a really fine line, with making Maddie be as rough and really pain. Her pain doesn't allow her to enjoy anything. I mean, she is just judgmental. She's just not, you're right. She's very much almost right on that razor edge of being unlikable. And she kind of falls back into that periodically. Like you'll start liking her a little bit and then she'll do something and you're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You know?
Maddie. But she's deeply grieving, and
She is,
you see the
yes.
sparks of her heart there. She is going home. Her mom's ill. She's going home. So she is being a good daughter, a dutiful daughter, and going home. And so the likable things come out. But yeah, she definitely has an edge. She definitely has a rough relationship with her father.
But it's in the 60s too. So it's really true, to the time period as far as the culture. I think Michelle has done a fantastic job of like really tying into that, how America was, the prevailing like belief systems of the time period. She's right on target, with that. And Maddie is a product of her time. She is fully embraced the lifestyle of the late 60s and
The
not really
counterculture of the late 60s.
that counterculture. Yes, yeah, right. That hippie, vibe. She lives in California, the whole bit. And it wasn't really that I think she chose that. It was just her grief drove her to that, and so it's kind of interesting to see. And it really gives you an insight on, like why did these people adopt that sort of lifestyle? And this is one of the reasons, why that happened, I think, is the war tore families apart and it created rifts. And her beliefs, she's very, very strongly believes what she believes. And that's also very much part of the time, the times. And that's how I think the part of the problem between her and her father is that she has embraced this ability to have these strong beliefs as a younger person, whereas maybe the generations past, they just didn't speak up this way they wouldn't have spoken to elders the way they do, and they wouldn't have, because what they're doing, well, the way they are responding seems to the older generation like it's very disrespectful. And I
Yeah.
don't think that that's what she thinks. Like she doesn't believe it's disrespectful,
Yeah.
but that's what it looks like to the older generation. So that problem, between her father and her, and there's a lot that she doesn't know, just like the title says. And that's the big, misreading things, misjudging people, because there's two sides to everything. And if you and she doesn't want to see the other side. She refuses to see the other side, really, for a very long time.
And that's where, yeah, Michelle did a really good job of that too. With the two
Mhm.
sides to every story, especially in the Vietnam era. I mean, it was tough for those who went. My father went to Vietnam, so um, I get this. And then you got the whole counterculture and the hippies believing just as strongly, and they want peace. So it's, yeah, quite a balance. And she did a really good job pointing out
Yes,
the good and the bad of both sides of this story of that era.
right. And no matter where you fall on that political spectrum, this book isn't going to be one that you're going to want toss against the wall, really, because she does do a fantastic job of bringing out what is good about this argument and what was valid about this argument, and also the flaws on both sides. I feel like I thought she handled this really volatile subject in an extremely balanced but yet like enlightened kind of way.
Yeah, well said. Well said. It's really, and Maddie again starts out rough, but boy, her character arc and the way she comes to at least see the other side.
Yeah.
She's not going to agree, but the way she comes to see the other side, and the way Mark's best friend, who's at the farm and who went to war with her twin brother and came home, the way he sees more of her side. So very well handled. That alone, 1969, the story would have been a good story, I think.
But then we get Ava. Then we get Ava, who is not at all unlikable.
No.
She is, we love her from like the moment she sets foot on the page. We love her. We don't like her mother-in-law very much, but we love her. And again, that's another thing. I really didn't think about this until just now, but like how Michelle shows how one person grieves is not the same as how another person grieves, because her mother-in-law was grieving as well. And so was Ava, just like Maddie, but they all three handled that grief in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Ava is grieving. She's a young widow. And I, it never really occurred to me, but back in 1942, what happened to these young widows? Here she is on her husband's, family farm without her husband there, and with this woman who is taking this death very hard, and she's not so nice, the mother-in-law. But you feel for her even in her meanness, quote unquote, because she's just as lost. These are two women who have now lost the men.
And I think, Ava makes it easier because Ava has such a compassionate heart that even though she doesn't like the way her mother-in-law is treating her, she's still trying to break through the barrier. She doesn't really know how, but she doesn't ever really give up on her either, so that's really nice to see as well.
That she remains kind and tries to do what's right, and yet she is so happy to get out of the house and get the job at the encampment and work there. I had known about the Japanese internment camps,
Right.
United States. It never occurred to me that there were German ones and Italian ones,
Right.
which Michelle briefly mentions. It never occurred to me that had happened with the German. Should have, when you know about the Japanese ones, but
never.
I a lot.
Right. Yeah, I didn't either, and that was fascinating. Especially when you hear Gunther's story at the beginning, like to see how it occurred. That was amazing. Like, and it's just like, how could that have happened? You think like, how could that have happened? But it really isn't that unrealistic, because look at 9/11, and how everybody's prejudice against Middle Eastern people, regardless of whether they'd lived here forever or they were new, So I mean,
they were born here, they're American, but
and that's, so it isn't unbelievable at all. It's still like I think it's one of those things, whenever anything like that happens, it's like, how did that happen? I mean, the same thing happened in Germany with the actual concentration camps, and those people who lived around them were too terrified to do anything about it. And you're like, you go over there and you're like, how could you have just looked the other way? But we do it to here just as much as anybody else anywhere ever has. And I think it's a very recurring theme, unfortunately, in human history.
it still happened fairly recently with that. But anyway, so Ava's at the camp and working hard, and meets Gunther. And the friendship developed, the forbidden friendship between them. And
Yeah.
again, it's her coming to realize another side of the story where, as an American, she could just think, okay, we're here, we're doing good work, we're Americans, and yet here are people like Gunther that are innocent.
Mhm.
And so she's learning like Maddie's learning. I mean, there are great parallels here between the two women.
Right. And and it's not romantic for a long time. I mean, there's sort of a attraction, but like they do a really good job of, she's just trying to help him, and they're lonely. They need somebody just to talk
Lonely
to.
and
They're just lonely.
well, and a lot of it, I think Maddie in 1969 is lonely. She's lost her twin,
Absolutely.
didn't have a lot of friends except the twin circle, and they're kind of friends, or Mark's best friend in the book. And these are lonely people, and how do they work through that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, no, this book was extremely well done. And I can't wait to talk to Michelle and, hear like how she put it together. I think that's one of the fascinating things about, chatting with the authors is like, how did this story evolve? Like, did you start with one side? Did you start with the other? Did they both come about at the same time? So I'm looking forward to that conversation later on this month.
the way the timelines melded together, and that it takes some ingenuity.
Mm, yes. I'm not that good of a planner, unfortunately. I don't know if I could write a dual timeline story because I mean, I can plan some, but then I tend to go off and I'm more of a pantser still,
Yeah.
even with the little bit of plotting I've learned to do.
Only to keep you straight. Yeah, I can't wait, like you said, to talk to Michelle about this. But I thought, again, for a dual timeline, to have it 20th century, both timelines in the 20th century, like
Yeah.
25 years apart, and how different. You're talking two different war times in America and
Yes.
very different attitudes.
Very. Yeah.
That.
Very different reactions to, the return of the soldiers is a big one, right? And we're all aware of how it was with Vietnam veterans, and how that did not go well, as opposed to the whole victory parades and all of the things with the World War II veterans. So it's a completely different outlook, completely different culture, uh, for those people. And I really did. I loved the ending of this story and what Maddie was able to do at the end, and how she was able to grow and change, and just that was amazing and phenomenal. Yeah.
So well done.
Really,
I so wish we could talk about it because I think
I
it's
know. It
great.
really reflects the faith journey that she was on too, because there is a faith journey. It's not a real prominent part of the story, really, but it's there.
Mhm.
Um, it's definitely there, but like it's not a huge, like it's not right like in your face or anything, but it's definitely the catalyst for, the people acting in ways that are uh kind and compassionate, and that being able to notice someone besides ourselves is really, that was Maddie's kind of problem at the beginning, is she was so wrapped up in her own grief that she really couldn't connect with anyone outside of herself. And so the letters that her mother asks her to read really plays into that, because it starts to get her kind of out of her own head a little bit. And of course, Mark's best friend makes huge inroads there and helps her see that other side that she's kind of turned a blind eye to all this time. So just a lot of things that have to happen for her to really um, embrace the change that she needed to make. So
And then with Ava, it's almost just persevering, but still, you know, she's trying to be respectful to her mother-in-law. Yet there's some dreams and some things that she wants too. Although she turns down a dream, I'm not going to share that either, but you know, another road she could have taken that she could have seen herself on, but she said, no, this isn't quite right. I mean, Ava was a strong, determined woman, and
Yes, very resilient.
yeah,
Both, I mean, both of them are.
but
It's just that it takes a lot for Maddie to come around, you know. Ava's strong throughout, makes very strong decisions and learns a lot from her mistakes quicker. You know, she's a quicker, but her grief is a little more distant also than what it's not that it's not there, but it's just a tad more removed, a little more distant, because I mean they had only been married for 2 or 3 months, a month. I don't know. It hadn't been very, it was a very
romances before he shipped off.
Right. It was one of those things. And I think, you know, her feelings were different than Maddie's towards, you know, the loss that she's had. So, you know, it makes sense. I mean, it's all realistic, very, very realistic, but the differences make a huge difference. I mean, those little things make a big difference in how she does deal with what happened. So, but even at that, she's very true and loyal to her husband, her deceased husband, and her mother-in-law, to what she committed to.
Strong women dealing with grief in very different ways, and how they work through it and come through it, and so much we could share, but we can't give away those spoilers. But then definitely a book worth reading.
And if you know someone who is dealing with grief, this would be a really good book for them to read, because it's in the fictional setting. I think it's not as intimidating maybe as what, you know, just a book on grief. You know, like you hand somebody a book on grief and they're like, so you don't think I'm dealing with it? Well, it's almost like they get defensive, you know, in a way. Sometimes, not everybody does, but you know, there's that risk. This book is going to be, it's going to help them, because there's so many different aspects of the grief process that these women go through. But yet I feel like the hope that is all the way through, and just that you know, resilience, like I said, and the strength that you were talking about, these women, and is really something that would probably help a person to at least kind of like come to grips maybe with what they are feeling and how they could possibly, you know, move forward.
Well, I think you said the key word there, and that's hope. And I hope in this book is a hopeful book. Leaves you feeling really good, really satisfied with the endings of both their stories.
Yes.
Great book. It was a great choice. It's out now, so pick it up. We highly recommend it. And again, our conversation with Michelle.
Yes.
I want to know I want to pick her brain.
I know. This was my first Michelle Shocklee book, but it's definitely not going to be the last one that I read. I've already been like perusing some of her other titles to see which one I want to read next.
There you go. A good book to start with, and now we're fans. So anyway, pick up All We Thought We Knew. And again, in a couple of weeks, we'll talk to Michelle Shocklee and figure out how she wove this great story together.
Yes.
With the dual timelines. Until then, gosh, y'all need to, you know, we would love for you to support us. RebeccaandRebecca.com, like our podcasts. We're on Spotify, iHeart, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll be able to find Rebecca and Rebecca. We have a YouTube channel. And again, YouTube and Spotify both have, like Spotify has a video option now, as well as the audio, and YouTube is now getting into the podcast business. So please find us.
And we have Instagram too. Yes. So if you're on Instagram, Rebecca and Rebecca Reviews, find us and follow. We'd love to have some conversations there as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Facebook too, by the way.
Oh, Facebook too.
Yeah, we have Rebecca and
I always
Rebecca
forget about
Times
it. I don't know.
Find.
Instagram and Facebook are almost like the same thing now.
They
So
are. They are. Anyway, find us if you want to see all our social media links. Go to RebeccaandRebecca.com. It's that pretty easy button there.
yeah.
And meanwhile, join us in a couple of weeks when we talk to Michelle Shockley, the author of All We Thought We Knew. So thanks for joining us today.
Bye.